don't assume you're not already breached. Don't assume that currently you're not compromised. Always test it, validate your environment as clean.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Man in the Middle podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Mullally. This is an Ithaca Media podcast, and I'm very happy to have our special guest with us today by the name of Loris Minassian. Loris is the founder and CEO of a company called CyberStash, which is a cybersecurity firm dedicated to advanced threat protection through its technology, Eclipse.XDR Cyber Defence Platform. With over 25 years of experience in cybersecurity himself, Loris has shaped CyberStash as a trusted partner for government and also private sectors alike, delivering innovative MDR, EDR, and threat intelligence services. Loris's commitment to cybersecurity excellence and industry innovation has positioned him as a leading voice in advancing cybersecurity standards globally. And in saying that, I'd like to welcome Loris to the show today. Loris, thanks for coming on.
Jeremy, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. But a lot of the guests that we have on here, Loris, I always like to get a sense of their background of how they got into this industry of cybersecurity. So I'd like to open the conversation starting with that point and hear a bit about how you got involved and interested in cybersecurity in the first place.
Yeah, sure. So I guess a good place to start will be my undergrad degree. I did it in telecommunication engineering, and in that there's a lot of computer engineering subjects and so forth. And I believe it was one of the subjects was in networking and network principles, which I got really interested in. And then following that, I landed after finished the university, I landed a job at the Cisco TAC in the Technical Assistance Center, where I got to continue the learning and troubleshooting problems for clients, Cisco clients that used to call in. At the time, I was in the switching team. I started off in the switching, so layer two team, not in the security team. And then that sort of combined with the security team, that the two teams, the switching and security, combined together. So I started learning security there. And very quickly, I looked at, what are the certifications that's required to really dig deep and understand, I guess, networking and the cybersecurity and so forth. So I got into learning all the doing all the Cisco certifications, CCNA, CCNP, all the security certifications that there are under that umbrella. And from there, of course, I got the hands-on skills with firewalls and IPSs and you name it. So I got into that, and so that was like my first 3 years of my career, and it's a great place to learn. Working at Cisco TAC, you get to see many different environments, troubleshoot many of them, understand a lot of pains and problems and so forth. From there, I sort of jumped ship. Started a company called Earthwave with my brother back in the year 2000, and that was a pure play managed service provider type business. So we built a security operations center. We got a handful of really smart guys to join the team, and we built that capability in managing and detecting threats and responding to threats. In those times, we were very much dependent on a SIM technology, where we collected logs and events and created, I guess, use cases and then responded to anything suspicious and so on. So that's how I got into cyber and just continued learning, never stopped learning, all the different certifications, whether it's the CISSP or CRISC or CISM. I did these certifications 15, 20 years ago. So yeah, continued learning and applying what I learned.
Yeah, great. And where did that lead into the founding of CyberStash? Could you tell us a bit about how that came to be from your journey?
Yeah, I mean, at Earthwave, we had very large customers. We got the opportunity to really see the pain points of many clients and how clients continue to be breached. From the likes of clients connecting to us from New South Wales Parliament, from many different schools, private schools, from banks and financial institutions. We even had McDonald's with 980 stores connecting through our gateway we had built. So I really got to see where and how customers build their security and their trust frameworks, and how technologies play a part in detecting, and addressing or mitigating risks, and where the weaknesses are, I guess, where we could do better. And that sort of led me to start CyberStash after I left Earthwave, and start CyberStash and apply what I had learned. So Earthwave, just in that time, Earthwave was acquired by Dimension Data Entity Security, so we became part of a bigger picture. But the lessons continued, the lessons I continued to learn were the same, in that the couple of big gaps is that we had a lot of threat intelligence data at our hands, but it wasn't being put in good use. So I thought, how can I do that? How can I start a company around and leverage that information and build a platform where it does leverage threat intelligence data in a way that does reduce your exposure and your risk? So that's one part. The other part was knowing very, very much that, after organization or system is breached, what we call the dwell time, the breach dwell time, how long a adversary remains on the system before they are discovered and cleaned out. We knew that dwell time was way too long in the industry. You're talking in over a year. In Australia, it was over 3 months, I believe. 90 days. So that's way too long for an adversary to be on your system, because the longer they're on your system, the bigger the business impact they can cause, because they can pretty much escalate their privileges and get to high value assets and so on. So knowing that fact as well, I thought, how can we detect threats and breaches that get past existing controls, defensive capabilities, whether they're next-gen firewalls or endpoint detection response systems, authentication systems? How can we actually detect it? And then I built my platform around that as well. So I wanted to offer protection and detection and response and extend these capabilities. So that's where I developed the Eclipse.XDR. Took about 4.5 years to develop, and I launched it at the end of last year.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So it sounds like you were taking a lot of the, sort of experiences you had, especially with Earthwave and like the kind of work you were doing there, and noticing certain gaps that were there, and that you could take this different approach. Because that's one of the things I wanted to ask you, Loris, because you are known for having this different approach to threat intelligence, especially, and you just touched on it there with the platform that you have built. Could you sort of explain how that is set apart from traditional models that are out there?
Yeah, look, the traditional model is that you collect logs from many different event sources, firewalls and your email gateways, your web proxies and so on, and user activity authentication logs. And then you correlate that with threat intelligence. And then when you see a correlation, you then have to, I guess, enrich that information and then investigate it and then raise a change request and respond to that threat. Now, that model has failed in many security operation centers and for many managed security service providers. And because the number of events that gets correlated is in the thousands. And when you have more and more customers that you're delivering to, those correlated events are in the tens of thousands per day. So it becomes an impossible task for security analysts to get to every single event, right? So I guess how we transformed and addressed that issue and that problem of resourcing really is that we thought to ourselves, if we know something is bad, why is there a need to investigate it? Why is there a need to do anything like that when what we want to do is optimize risk and resources? The first thing we want to do is block it, right? When something is bad, you want to block it. When you're confident enough, you want to block it. So we took this threat intelligence data, and instead of just triggering events, which creates a lot of noise, we actually took it and we placed all that traffic that gets correlated in blocking mode. So effectively, when we block, what happens is, of course, you optimize risk because the threat is contained, and resources as well, because that's one less event you have to investigate, or the security analyst has to investigate, right? So this applies to both traffic inbound, like to attacking exposed services, and also outbound. So traffic going to botnets, command and control service, to drop sites, to phishing sites, and fraudulent sites, and so on. And if you can minimize that risk, right, and you can block the traffic, then you don't have to do much more, unless you see a pattern and it's repeating, and then you have to, of course, continue on investigating, potentially clean up the compromised machine. So based on the difference in the methodology we use with what we do with threat intelligence, the amount of exposure and the risk we're able to now reduce is significantly more, right? So we clean up all the bad things on the internet. It's like this: if you know something is bad, you don't have to do anything or tricky like deep packet inspection. You don't have to do anything advanced like AI. You don't have to do machine learning or big data analytics or anything like that. That's all. That would be a waste of system and processing time. You want to know when something's bad with a certain confidence level. It's bad, clean it up, right? Don't do anything fancy. So that's the methodology we applied.
Yeah, okay. So it sounds like not only are you're minimizing the risk there as well, but from a resource point of view, you're limiting the need to use those resources in an area which I imagine is already so resource heavy, right?
Exactly. So, of course, in the cybersecurity world, skills are hard to come by. Experienced security analysts are hard to come by. So you want to make the system autonomous. You want to have it real time, because at the end of the day, when you're being attacked, you're competing with time, right? And you want to respond as quick as possible. You don't want to have an alert sitting there in the inbox or in the SIM view or alert box type of thing, and someone doesn't even get to it because they've got all these other alerts before it. They have to investigate, or they've gone out to lunch, or they're on holiday, or anything like that, right? You want the thing to work for you.
Yeah, and that last point really leads in well to the next question, because I mean, like originally how we got in touch was the fact that you're one of the speakers at the upcoming CyberCon in Melbourne this year, and like the sort of topic of your talk is around moving beyond detection to action. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, Loris, is are you able to sort of give us an example of how CyberStash is translating that threat intelligence to real-time defenses? How does that process work for you guys?
Yeah, so what we do exactly is, in the cloud, we integrate with many different threat feed providers. This includes commercial, open source, government threat feeds, threat intel that we gather, our own team gathers. And then, it's one thing to have all that great data, but it's another thing then to be able to leverage it and operationalize it in a way that actually prevents or blocks attacks. So what we do, we deploy our XDR gateways, and our XDR gateways are either hardware devices, just like firewalls, or virtual devices that can be in the cloud, in AWS, Google, or Azure. And these gateways literally call our cloud and bring in all the emerging threat feeds, bring it all in to its database, and in real time apply that blocking policies to the traffic that's coming in and going out of environments. So whether you have an office with users behind it, whether you have a data center with systems sitting behind an exposed services, or you're in the cloud and you've got workloads running there. It doesn't matter. We deploy our gateway and instantly start protecting your exposed services and your users and systems for both traffic inbound and outbound. And we inspect all IP protocols across the IP stack and DNS traffic as well. So that's how we actually operationalize it in practical terms.
Yeah, okay. And like I want to talk a bit around the side of alerts, because in this space, like, it's so dominated by alerts and responding to those alerts. From that standpoint, Loris, how does yourself and CyberStash like balance that tactical side with the technology that's available to us now?
So first and foremost, when you're blocking and you're setting out your priorities to block, right, and prevent the attack or to disrupt the attack in its I guess progression through the kill chain, what you want to do is make sure that you're doing it in a way that it scales and is meaningful to the conversation. It's no point using the threat intel that comes from your next-gen firewalls, that is offered by your next-gen firewalls or EDR systems, because these systems are not designed to process threat intelligence data at scale, right? So the likes of the largest next-gen firewalls would block maybe 100,000 indicators, or can process 100,000 indicators. I think the biggest ones would probably do about 4 million, and those firewalls cost $250,000 themselves. So how can we do this so that in a tactical way, so that it scales, right? And instead of blocking, let's say 100,000 or even 4 million indicators, we have to be having a conversation about blocking in the hundreds of millions, if not in the billions of indicators. So what we do, we take that threat intelligence data and use a purpose-built gateway, XDR gateway, that can scale to process such number of indicators. And that's only just touching the specific indicators, not even talking about the tactical blocking. When you start applying tactical intelligence, that is using the threat intelligence, specific intelligence, and correlating that with high-risk countries, high-risk domains, high-risk top-level domains, I should say, high-risk autonomous system numbers. And then this is where the real tactical blocking comes in, where you can apply large blocking policies so that you can get ahead of the attack, right? So no longer are you depending on having specific intelligence about the specific IP and domain, but you are actually reducing exposure because you're starting to map out where the adversaries operate and which infrastructures they operate on, and you start blocking those infrastructures.
Right. So like it sounds like having this like layered approach is important, because like you're effectively like taking advantage of like a more proactive approach rather than being
That's right.
purely reactive. Is that sort of what it
Yeah,
kind of
absolutely.
Yeah.
So most organizations, they buy an next-gen firewall and they depend on the intelligence or the signatures, and that's it. They don't do anything else with that technology, right? So their level of risk when they buy a firewall and they turn on all the modules and all the IPS and all that stuff reduces, right? The level of risk reduces to a certain degree, but then there is no further continuous reduction of that risk, right? So what you have to do is leverage what you have, or use analytics and collect analytics from the events that get triggered, so that you can apply tactical decision policies based on good decision, right? So you need to leverage the technologies in a way that maximizes the return on reducing risk, right? And most organizations, if not, I would say almost all organizations, no organization does that, right? They just buy it, they leave it, they might tune it a little bit after a few weeks, and that's it. It's literally it, right? What we have to do is think about, look, we've got an amazing technology, let's leverage it. How can we leverage it? Well, first we need analytics. So we collect logs from our XDR gateway, and that analytics starts telling us a story about where are these high risk infrastructures, the top level domains that continuously are used, and the autonomous system numbers that are continuously used by adversaries, and where are the attacks coming from, and so on. Can we categorize that based on the type of attack, like brute force or denial of service attacks, or phishing attacks, and so on? And a pattern starts forming, and you use that pattern to then apply blocking, inform your blocking policies. So that's the way you do it. So it's when someone clicks on a link, it's as simple as that. Someone clicks on a link, a user clicks on a link that's malicious. So first of all, that link needs to be resolved. If there's intelligence about that domain, it can be blocked, right? If not, then if there's intelligence about that top level domain that's high risk, you can block it. Great, that's another place. If not, and that domain gets resolved to an IP address, then the connection to that IP address can potentially be blocked if the IP is on the block list, right, or threat list. If not, is that IP part of or hosted in a country that you're blocking because it's a high risk country, or is it part of a high risk autonomous system number that continue to allow adversaries to build their infrastructures on? So you've got multiple opportunities using threat intelligence data to do your blocking on. And you need good analytics to inform your decisions on whether to block something or not.
Yeah, okay. And I've got here my notes as far as attack surface reduction.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what we're talking about from the standpoint of reducing the ability for those attacks to take place? Is that
that's right. That's right.
Comes in?
I think attack surface normally applies to dark web intelligence and external, how everyone sees your organizations from an external point of view. It's the same sort of idea, reducing your exposure, but we apply it to all traffic, inbound and outbound. It's not just the visibility that adversaries have from outside in.
Yeah. Okay. I want to turn the conversation around to when it comes to actually integrating this new threat intelligence into existing systems. So I guess, as a company, how does CyberStash look to address these challenges as far as integration goes when it comes to companies looking to have this threat intelligence approach?
Yeah, look, one of the things we identified very early on is that the amount of data we have, threat intelligence data, there are no, let's say, firewalls or any other device out there that can process the amount of data we have. Because it's just, imagine if we sent a next-gen firewall 10,000 or 100,000 or a million or 4 million indicators within minutes. The firewall will crash, right? It's not built to process threat intelligence data at scale. So hence, we built our XDR gateway. As far as integration, we had very good view of, okay, we just want to slip in, right, into the existing infrastructures. So we built a layer 2 device. You don't have to change IP addresses, or you don't have to change any routing. It's a connection in and a connection out. It's an inline device that does the blocking. We can scale up to 10 gigabits per second, and so on and so forth. So line speed. So integration is quite easy because we don't touch any other existing technologies, and that the client might have. And this is also, we did this on purpose as well, because we're an extended detection and response capability. We didn't want to depend on existing infrastructure, existing solutions that have failed to block the attack in the first place, right? We wanted to apply an extended capability, and so we chose that model instead of trying to integrate with existing firewalls or SIEM systems, which are already noisy in themselves. We didn't want to get involved with that noise and that mess that's already been created.
Yeah, and I want to ask, because and actually, frankly, some of the recent conversations we've had on this podcast has been centered around the rapid pace that technology is moving. So that obviously applies from a threat intelligence point of view as well. So with the platform that you have, Loris, I guess how do you look to address the increasing developments and the change in technology as the years progress?
Look, technology changes, yes, but there are some technologies that have been with us forever, right? And the endpoint security, the next gen, the network security, now the cloud, of course, mobile phones, they're a little bit as well. The main technologies are always going to be around. What's important is the intelligence you feed into these technologies and how you can empower them, or how do you integrate with them so that and existing infrastructure so that you can add value from a point of view of risk reduction, value in a point of view of optimizing resources, and so on. So one of the things you got to do is keep up with threat intelligence data, right? And that said, being vendor agnostic is one of the most important parts of a threat intelligence program. Don't just depend on a single vendor, because no single vendor is going to give you all the information, or they don't have visibility of all the threat landscape, right? And in fact, when we looked at threat intelligence that we pay for from different commercial threat feed providers, and we compared the data sets, we see that there's only at most about a 4% overlap between the threat intelligence
Really?
data that we get. That means that every single threat feed provider or threat intel provider has almost a pretty unique view of the threat landscape. And if they don't, if their overlap is, let's say, more than 80%, 70% of something we already have, then we wouldn't even take it on. It's not worth it, right? And then you compare commercial threat feeds to the open source threat feed intelligence, and again, there's only over about a 12% overlap. So it's very important to be vendor agnostic. Don't just depend on your firewall vendor or your vendor when you're designing your threat intelligence program. Access threat intel from multiple threat feed providers is one of the most important part, and of course, the next important part is to do blocking at scale. Right? If you don't have these two, you're missing two important pieces of the puzzle to actually reduce your risk.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. I wasn't aware of how like little overlap there was between the different vendors there. So yeah, I can totally see the not just the benefit but the need to be agnostic in that sense. Just touching a bit more on your experience in this space, Loris. Where do you think that most companies are perhaps missing the mark when it comes to taking actionable threat intelligence? And you sort of alluded to it actually in that last response, really. But you could expand a little more on that, where some areas you think that perhaps aren't getting the attention.
Most companies are not mature enough to have a threat intelligence program, right? So what they do is they buy tech, and the threat intel that comes with that tech is what they get, and that's it, right? And when there's a breach that occurs, guess what they do? Or when there's an investigation after the breach, guess what happens? They find an IP or a domain, and they look out in the open source community and go, oh, we already knew about this IP and domain. The community already knew about that IP and domain. It's just that the existing technologies that they wasn't part of their data set to do a blocking or not even detection. That's when the real value of threat intelligence realized. When there's a breach and you already had that intelligence, if you only had that intelligence, integrated with the technology, you would have blocked the attack chain. So most organizations, again, are not mature enough to have a threat intelligence program and depend on their existing vendors. The ones that are mature enough to get a threat intelligence program, they don't, and yes, they do get vendor agnostic threat intelligence. Most people realize that's very important. However, they don't have a way to integrate that in a way that scales to actually block attacks. in real time. And so they're still in the same position as non-mature organizations in that something happens, they go to their threat intelligence platform and they investigate it. They get all the attributions about the attacker and who they're attacking and then what they're after, what the APT group is, and the campaign and all the specific TTPs. What good is all that if you haven't used that data in real time to do the blocking, right? And that's where a mature threat intelligence program needs to get to, where you're doing blocking of everything that is coming in.
Yeah. So like making sure you're arriving at that stage, because that's like quite a
That's
critical stage.
Timing is very important.
Yeah. Okay. And then for like that's focused from I suppose like the at the executive level, but from the broader cybersecurity industry, are there certain misconceptions around threat intelligence out there, Loris? And if so, like could you share some of those based on your own experience?
So many of the advisory reports that are put out there, about APT groups and all these things, 9 out of 10 of them, when you look at it, you'll see they're not really sophisticated actors. They're not state-sponsored actors. These are APT groups that are mostly financially motivated. Most of the attacks are hopeful. They're opportunistic. They're not targeted, right? So most of the breaches that occur out there continue to occur because of what we call opportunistic attacks. Hopeful hackers building the infrastructure to attack everyone and anyone, thereafter increasing their ROI, right, on their effort that they've put into design the attack. And so what happens is that understanding that means that it means that these infrastructures and these attackers or these attacks get discovered very quickly because they're spray and praying, literally, right? And once you get discovered, that's intelligence, and you can use that intelligence to do, prevent and block the attack going forward. So that's the misconception. Most people think that those advisory reports and so forth are real sophisticated and actors and so on. They're not, and you don't normally get breached because you're being targeted specifically. You're just unlucky. Yes, there's big game hunting where they come after your industry or come after industries that are or companies that they can gain a lot of financial gain or do a ransomware. But again, they're coming from the same infrastructures, right? That the attacks come from, and once you understand where those are, you can really reduce your exposure.
Okay, well, because that leads in well to my next question, sort of more like a practical framework. If you're talking to a business, Loris, what are some of the small steps that you could take to make a bigger impact in order to reduce your attack surface today? And obviously they'd want to come and see you, but just sort of, I guess, get their thinking and be making those steps in the right direction.
Yeah. One of the things is, don't assume you're not already breached. Don't assume that currently you're not compromised. Always test it, validate your environment as clean. Don't depend on technology alone. Technology often fails. The breaches you hear about in the paper are all large organizations, enterprises that have invested heavily in advanced cybersecurity solutions. But they continue to be breached. There continue to be ransomware. And these organizations have, the latest tech. All of them are in the Gartner, top right quadrant. But they continue to breach. So don't depend on technology. Technology often fails for multiple reasons. And the larger you are as an organization, the more likelihood that something's not configured properly, that, something is disabled, you're more targeted and so on and so forth. You've got a bigger, attack surface. You've got more users doing, doing silly things, clicking on links and opening attachments without validating and all that stuff. So my advice to organizations is don't make assumptions, validate. How do you validate? You have to run compromise assessments and ensure that your environment is clean all the time, right? And you have to do that using a methodology that doesn't depend on your existing technologies, which may have failed already that would have failed already to prevent or even detect the threat.
Yeah, right. So it's sort of like a twofold thing as far as like, the larger and more sophisticated your company is, the more sophisticated your approach to protecting yourself also has to be. But then also on the flip side, just because you're a smaller company doesn't mean you're not vulnerable as well.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. There's, threat intelligence can be applied in so many ways. So you got to really design based on your maturity level. Assuming you're an enterprise organization, you have to design the threat intelligence program to apply. Really think about it. How does it apply to protection or detection or investigation or research? You might have a really good threat intelligence program and a very sophisticated team, but are you going to start doing research in threat intelligence? So that's a whole different level. The research normally gets done by the big vendors, right? IT vendors. But if you've got if you're a large enterprise organization, maybe a financial firm, and you've got lots of funding to start a research in threat intelligence, that may apply to you. But that's not something that a normal organization would ever think about doing or should ever think about doing. So you have to understand what your strengths are, what you want to do, and are you going to get a good gain on your investment in building that capability in your team before you start investing in it.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. We are unfortunately getting towards the end of this conversation, Loris, but I'd like to actually wrap it up with a bit more of a personal touch from you and ask you, because it's very, like, from my end anyway, it's very clear just how passionate you are about cybersecurity in general, but especially this area of threat detection and threat management. I guess what keeps you so passionate about this space, and what excites you most about what it is you do?
I would say being innovative is very important for me. Designing stuff and building it and seeing it work and seeing it help organizations, is what keeps me going. Of course, naturally, the space we're in is continuously growing. It's never, you can't even take a breath for a day or a week. It's like you're gonna get fallen behind. So naturally, it keeps things interesting. Just that in itself. It's cybersecurity now with AI coming into the picture. It's gonna be changing everything. There's a lot of organizations investing in many capabilities that leverage AI now, not just in cyber, but in every industry. So one of the things is the pace at which things are changing with AI and how easy it is to now develop solutions and get certain corner cases. Whatever is advanced today that you have to pay a premium price for, you can be sure that in the next 6 months, in a year's time, it's going to be integrated and available in many different technologies. It's going to be commoditized, right? So you got to really think about what that means for vendors that are investing heavily in developing solutions that are AI, in AI and so forth. AI in itself is changing, and things are getting easier and cheaper all the time. So the solutions that are designed today and the platforms that are being used today are gonna be very compared to in a year's time, it's going to be very expensive. So you could have done it at 10% of the cost, right? And not only that, it's going to become a commodity. Whatever you built in every technology, it'll become a commodity. It'll be like, oh yeah, we've got that. So you really have to think about what you're building, what you're investing in. And this really keeps me excited because, it's like, how do you build something that is in our platform anyway, that's always going to extend that protection, detection, and threat hunting capability. So yeah, that's the way I view things.
Yeah, excellent. No, that's an excellent way to finish off this conversation. But yeah, Loris, I really want to thank you for coming on the show, sharing your insights and sharing a bit about your journey and your experience. But how can people find out more about yourself and CyberStash if they wish to?
Yeah, go to our website, contacts page, fill in the form, email us, info@cyberstash.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. Reach out to me there, and let's have a conversation.
Fantastic, and we'll make sure we have those relevant links in the
thank you, Jeremy.
description
Appreciate
for this episode. But yeah, once again, Loris, really thank you for coming on, and
Pleasure.
I look forward to seeing you over at CyberCon in Melbourne.
Yeah, all the best. Thanks, Jeremy. Take care.
Good stuff. Thanks, Loris.
See you.